Hello there, and welcome back to Boardroom Insights. Here today with Jason Atkinson, the managing director of a company called Russam. And Russam are a professional services organization, and they specialize in providing interim management to organizations. So today is all about learning the interim world and seeing the drivers of that, what's happening in the world at large that is encouraging boards to consider this. And we'll also look at some of the risks, the downsides, the upsides, and all that goes with that. Jason, you are so welcome. Thank you for joining me. How are you?
Pleasure to be here, Alan.
So, Jason, can we kick off with interim management as a concept? What is interim management in the first place?
Well, I mean, it's a slice of the self-employment market. And that is something that has been something we should be very proud of in the UK. And it's something we've always had. And it goes the concept of self-employment goes a long way back. I mean, it goes back to Roman times with publicans who were essentially contractors collecting taxes and building roads and things. And fast forward, we use contractors. There was always about 15% of our working population in the UK in the 19th, 20th century that were fueling our industrial revolution that were contractors. But really the modern concept of interim management really came in the mid to late 1970s. And I'd love to say it started in Britain, but from my research, we believe it started in the Netherlands, where there were very long notice periods and companies faced extremely large costs for terminating employees. So crudely, they needed some really good people, overqualified people to come in quickly and sort out companies and maybe work around these permanent employees who were not delivering the value. So my firm started soon after that time, and in fact we set a definition for what interim management was way before I joined the organization. I've been 20 years, but way before that. And it's something like this. An interim manager is a senior independent business leader, or they're a project manager. They're an expert in their field, so they're overqualified. They've got a really top professional product that they're known for. They perform to a high level. They achieve quantifiable objectives. They deliver things. They come with this drive and energy. They hit the ground running, and they can adapt quickly to new environments. So it's about immediacy and getting in there and adding value. So it's like I said, in summary, a slice of that freelance, self-employed. Some people call some of it the gig economy, and it's a slice of it. It's probably the more senior slice of that market.
But Jason, it's a temporary role, isn't that correct?
It is. The average is something like 133 days on a project.
Right.
So that's more than half a year. They tend to be full time, so they tend to be in situations where a project's off-piste, an integration is needed of an acquisition. There is a crisis. There's a gap. There's a gap of a CEO or a CFO. They need somebody to come in, and it's not consulting. There might be a little bit of advice, but really it's about quick time to impact, very short-term time to impact, but then delivering and leaving a legacy. So that legacy could be appointing a permanent team.
Okay.
But you want somebody that can start yesterday.
Yeah.
And I think we know, and I was reflecting on, I was listening to Radio 5 Live this morning, and this issue with Panorama and the BBC, and they were saying that Tim Davie, the Director General, might be in post for another 9 months. And so I thought, oh my goodness, you need an interim executive, someone that could be there to drive through the change and repositioning of the BBC
Right.
who's overqualified, who's all the things I was just saying, to start next week and maybe do a little handover with Mr. Davey. Recruitment can take a long time to do. And there's
Well, is that,
notice periods, of course.
yeah, isn't that one of the main drivers? I suspect that in the lead times in finding the right candidate that fits not just technically and
Yeah.
strategically, but is also the right person for the fit with the team and so on, that can take time. And if somebody is retiring or resigning or being exited for whatever reason, there can be a gap. And that's where your interim comes in, I suspect.
Yeah, I mean, 65% of the time, we're putting in somebody that's bringing unique skills and experience to that situation. So if they're looking to expand the business, the manufacturing business from the UK into Eastern Europe and set up in Poland, we bring in people with supply chain, with international experience that have done that before multiple times. So the skills could be absent in the organization. They could have unique skills around helping a fintech get FCA regulatory authorization, for
Right.
example. So why don't you rent those skills in for 6 or 12 months? And it could even be flexible. But why not rent those skills in? Because you probably don't need them permanently. Now, there could be another piece of work. You really like that person. And so you say, could you stick around and do another project? Um, sometimes, this concept of interim management brings so much flexibility. I tend to see there's two camps here. I think there's exercises we go through where it's all about transformation. It's very much about restructuring, turnaround, it's heavy lifting. And then there are times where we bring in an interim where actually they could be a good interim to perm
Aha. So
transition.
it's like a road test for them, is it?
Yeah, so yeah, try before you buy. Um,
Mm.
there's some people say, "Oh, no, 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 no," but actually, you've got to be open about these things. It does happen. In the private equity sector, it happens a lot. It probably happens about 35% of the time, where
Right.
the client says, so we are midlife ownership. So it's a private equity firm. They're in the midlife of owning a portfolio company. Say that's a 50 million widget factory. And it's performing well, but they've got to really boost the capacity. They've really got to soar in 18 months to get the sale price they want, to get the. So they say, look, where can we bring in some skills that can help us to really soar? And there's been many cases where we bring in the interims, we bring them in quickly, but we quickly they try them out. They're good. If we're doing our job, they're really good, and they transition them to permanent to help to lock them in as the rest of the management team would be through that transaction.
But of course, by then everyone will know if the fit is right. Not just
Exactly, exactly. And I joined my current firm as an interim, and it was something very different for me. And so maybe it's a slightly different reason, but I thought, away from my financial service background, and it was a great way to get to know the organization, see if culturally it was a good fit. You can also be pretty bolshy and objective as an interim. You can sort of push things hard. I remember doing interim before I joined my current firm, but I was with a share trading platform, and I really pushed the CEO and founder. I said, look, really, you've got to take my advice. I remember one night at a wine bar, I said, look, you know best with 99 other things of 100, but
mm,
this thing with the timings of launching a new platform, I know what I'm talking about. And if you don't want to take my advice, well, I don't extend my agreement with you, but I'm really
right.
giving you sound advice because I've done this before.
But
I could do that.
you could do that with no fear of consequences because you weren't an employee worried about your long term position with that company. So you could be
Yeah,
more
I mean,
honest. Is that it?
I mean, I think interims are, it's more than being biased, of course, on this topic, as I eat, sleep, and drink interim management. But I think interims are a really great value, cost-effective way of doing things. You've got, they're valued on the days they work. there's highly flexible contractual arrangements. So, we might sign a 6-month agreement with a notice period, but you're paid the days you're working. With
Right.
the days you fill in a timesheet. So that's why we measure value from the first day, the second day, the first week, quick wins. Really looking under some rocks and saying, actually, there's a problem over here no one's told you about, Mr. or Mrs. CEO,
Right.
chair. There's an issue that with the balance sheet, there's some things that just should have come up to the boardroom table. And we need to talk about these things. There's no axe to grind.
Yeah.
And, it's a very healthy. The way I often express it is you're bolted in. This might be unfair. We work with a lot of management consultants or through them, but they are, I think, overarching, bolted on, giving advice, giving guidance. We're inside. So our clients are buying us, my firm, as advisors, but they're really buying that unique expertise
Yeah.
that's coming in at the same
And
time.
I guess in both cases, the client is getting objectivity and freshness from a new set of eyes, be it a consultant or an interim. But the interim rolls up their sleeves, is there 5 days a week, whereas a consultant is, as I know this only so well myself, we're in and out, and we can be advisory, but we cannot do. So it's up to the client then. So it's really interesting. And then I guess you've mentioned finance a couple of times. Is the interim world dominated by finance people, or does it extend to other disciplines also, Jason?
It does. Finance is one of the key 3 areas, and in certain sectors, it's very dominant. So going back to the private equity sector, and I'd say financial services as well, the majority of the roles we're doing are finance. We might be putting in an interim management accountant, an FP&A specialist, a CFO. It's something. I think it goes back to the investors. They care about certain things. They want the right set of reports. They want the right finance person in place. It's probably the spotlight is on the finance and the restructuring and refinancing, and they've got to. So we're always looking for people from our talent pool. We have 28. We have nearly 30,000 on our talent pool.
Right.
So we have a lot of finance people, and in this case, we're looking for people that are not only brilliant, independent. Chartered accountants with a track record of different projects, but we're looking for that private equity knowledge and experience that have been in and around M&A activity. Because they look through a different set of lenses
Yeah, sure.
at the deals, and they don't want our clients, be it a sort of mid cap or a large private equity firm. They don't want to take the risks. They want someone tried and tested on that.
Yeah.
Across other sectors, are the sectors that tend to use interim managers. The big ones are, I mentioned private equity and financial services, manufacturing and industrial organizations, healthcare and pharmaceutical, the government. There's ebbs and flows. It sort of draws people onto the payroll a bit more. We deal with bona fide self-employed entrepreneurs who
Right.
are typically driving their own careers and deciding what work they want to do.
Sure.
But those are the big sectors. My firm does a lot in the not-for-profit sector. The sectors that maybe don't use as many are, I'd say that after now 40 plus years of pioneering, it's a more mature concept.
Yeah.
We're still a small sector compared to management consultancy. They're probably valued at over 20 billion in the UK for the UK economy. We're 1.5 to 2 billion of value.
Right.
If you work out how many people we have on assignment and the revenues we generate from that. So and we also are small compared to we're smaller compared to executive search. So putting in so the big search firms, the Russell Reynolds and Spencer Stewart's, if you add all that up, they're a bit bigger than us.
But of course,
Well,
you're not pushing yourself out as a search firm. It might happen to end up as a search assignment, but that's not your primary. But
yeah, I mean, our positioning is to look at the situation. So we're very advisory with our clients. We get in, and I mean, this is how I think our industry works. We're not recruiters.
yeah,
We're out of industry. We're out of business. We've got to go in, and if they're an insurance company going through process and problems with the regulator, and they have to restructure their sales force or automate their processes, we can speak their language. We can say, look, we can get to the heart of what they need, and then say, look, you could go and hire a big consultancy, or you might have done that already, but you need some people, really hands-on people, getting on with the delivery of the
yeah,
project.
yeah.
So going back to your original question, yeah, finance is one of the big disciplines, but it's it could be across any of those.
I guess HR. I've seen HR as well, Jason.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. I think it can be across all those functional areas. And there's a long tail we're doing, and I'm seeing in the market, Interim's doing AI AI work around AI implementation in
yeah,
firms, doing very specific things around legal, but finance, operations, project management, general
mhm,
management are the biggies
right, right.
where they need those skills.
And the commitment to the company, I mean, obviously the commitment is to you as an organization, as the, if you like, the broker, the professional services firm in the middle. So the commitment to you for a period of time, undoubtedly. But beyond that, there's no commitment on the client around pensions and stuff like that, I'm assuming.
Well, I know. I mean, that's why I think it's um, when you really sit down with a client. I mean, I've been in a situation where a client has said, "Look, I really need a great project manager. I've got to get this. We're putting in a new ERP system. We've got to get this project on
Yeah,
track." And I've said, "Well, look, we've got someone for you at I'll make this up, £800 a day." And they say,
yeah,
"Oh my goodness," you
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
And so I've said, "Look, let's get out a piece of paper."
And work it out across a year.
And,
Yeah,
and say, okay, what would you have paid the permanent person? Well, they might
yeah.
say, 80,000 or something. And then we say, okay, let's add in the pension, let's add in sick days, let's add in
Holiday
the
pay.
employer's national insurance,
Right.
let's add, et cetera, et cetera. And then let's divide that by 220 working days. And they might come up with a number bigger than the
Yeah, I
original
get it.
number I
Yeah,
gave them, or in that range. And I say, so look, let's have a conversation now. You want somebody um, yesterday who's overqualified, who's ready to go, and is ready to go to some quite remote places. I mean, we're often putting in people in quite remote parts of Britain or around the world. We put we're part of a global group, Alan. We co-founded a global interim management group. So essentially, there's the same company as ours in about 20 other
so
countries.
you
So I can.
interact and you're like,
We're not a homogeneous group, but the
right,
interim executive management binds us together. So I might get a call from a client who's running a fintech in Saudi Arabia and
mm,
needs to um, digitize their operations and move with the times and really work on their customer experience. And so I will call my sister company in Dubai who works in that
right,
region and say, look, how can we seamlessly help you? And
yeah, get it.
other areas of the world are developing fast. We're looking at new members in countries like Japan and in Africa who weren't on our radar at all a few years ago.
Yeah,
The US is a massive market for interim management,
is it? Why is that?
and I think that it, it's it kind of goes back to a lot of the things I've been saying. I mean, America's always had different employment laws. It's been crudely easier to hire and
And
fire
fire,
people,
indeed.
but we've gone beyond that, and there are people set up in this way, set up to get involved. So it's not a way. Occasionally it is, but it's not a way of hiring permanent people. It's a way of getting projects done with
Gotcha.
specific skills at just the size of the US and the size of the
Yeah.
market. I mean, I think what I would say is that in the UK and probably overseas as well, we're not a counter-cyclical kind of proposition. When we're in recession, we're impacted as well. But times of change, we can be quite a good proposition. We can be quite buoyant, and look at the UK at the moment. I mean, the forces that we have. I guess we're waiting on this budget
Hmm.
tomorrow, but we've got there's fewer job vacancies. There's rising unemployment. There's huge pressures on business with the increase on national insurance. So the cost of the Employment Rights Bill coming in, there's more and more cost of hiring people permanently at all levels.
Yeah.
At all
Yeah.
levels.
And I guess though, Jason, the concept of interim is not just for filling empty seats in a particular role in an organization. From what you're saying, it might also be something where you're maybe a company's trying to bolster a project. And
Exactly.
it's not that they have an empty seat, but they're trying to give an extra turbo boost for a period of time to get it over the line. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
and so it goes back to my point about I think what we do is a more mature concept. Clients have come back to it again and again, but with every 20 hires, they might say, "Look, let's look at interim management." So your example of a project, well, if it's a 6 or 9 month project, um, why not look at bringing somebody in? Now you've got to weigh that up against somebody that you might pull from within your organization
Yeah.
that could do the project, but they may not be available, or that pulling them over might create a gap somewhere else that you need to backfill. So we say to our clients, look, if you haven't tried this before, look at it. We're not going to force feed it to you, but you need to get things done. And going back to my point about the economy and the the attitude, I think, of business leaders, and I'm one of them. We're nervous about what's coming. So if you were going to hire, I've had a client say to me recently, "Look, I've got 5 permanent hires, project roles, business
Hmm.
analysts, and things. But Jason, what if I only hired 2? Could we then bring in some interim
Right.
support?" So it's sort of like, okay, it's probably best for UK PLC and for our chancellor if those 5 people were hired or 7 people.
Yeah.
But this is what business leaders are saying. It's like, I've got to get things done. I want to take advantage of opportunities. I want to launch that product.
Right.
I want to deliver AI solutions. I want to expand. I want to move my footprint more out of the UK.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want to sell more in Poland. Um, I need resource to get that done. What are my options?
Hmm.
And I think this climate points towards looking at what we offer
Yeah. Yeah.
more and more, or have it on the menu,
Right. Right.
along with other things. Now there's consultancies. There are that do more delivery work as well. There are firms that are sort of hybrid between consultancy and interim management, and I think it's just about being cleverer with getting things done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not saying, okay, this is the way we've done it before. This is the way we've hired people. I mean, the
But they're
one
very
the one
often.
area with having 3 boys, and one of them's first job in London and others at university. As an aside, we're at this sort of senior end of the market. I do worry about the graduate level of the market, and seeing these large organizations, the big four and consulting, and big manufacturing companies bringing in less and less apprenticeships and graduates, because someday those people will be our interim managers. They will be our people on our books who
Right.
have got the grey hair,
Yeah.
and are ready to be self-driven and directed, and all
Right.
the things I was talking about earlier,
Okay.
with helping companies in need for a period of time, and they've gone through their careers, and they're ready to do that. They have the confidence. They have some financial backbone
Yeah.
behind them.
Well, that actually
Because
leads me to the question of what is an ideal candidate? Because obviously it goes back to your point at the very start when you talk about this self-employed um,
yeah,
ethos that's been in the country for
well,
hundreds of years. But what does it
it's a great
take?
question.
Yeah.
I probably get contacted by 10 or 20 executives a day, and great referrals. Have a business partner will say, "You've got to meet Sally. She's had an amazing career, 25 years at a big bank, and Interim is for her." And of course, I spend some time with her. I always recommend courses that are run for potential interim executives. It's broader than interim, because you could go into, I will talk about fractional, you could go into building a portfolio, NED. All those things are very entrepreneurial. You're out on your own. You've got to find the work. You've got to be your own HR person, your own marketing person, your own salesperson, etc. You might be the only employee of your lovely little
Mhm.
firm. But I just was thinking about a great guy in our industry called Simon Berry, who I used to be chair of the Interim Management Association in the UK, and we started working with Simon, and he's put 3,500 people through his course, and I think only about 30% have gone on to be interim managers, or give it a go, because it's a tough
Ah,
gig.
right.
It's a tough thing. Um, you've got to be pretty dedicated to it. The first role might be the easiest to get. It certainly was when I was an interim. I'd
Mm.
be made redundant, and it took a while to be let go
Yeah. Yeah.
from my firm. I stuck around and did some projects, and then, because we were divesting parts of the business, this is nearly 30 years ago. And a bit of the business we sold off said, "What are you doing next?" And I said, "I'm not sure." And they said, "Why don't you come in on a contract?" So I said, "Why not?" And I went in on a day rate, and I had no idea what I was doing, quite
Yeah.
honestly. I did a few projects, and I don't think I was very good at it. I think it was the right thing at the wrong time. I think I had a young family, and I was not the ideal interim candidate. I think it's about age. I think you've got to be really clear on your professional product. I mean, there are 30-year-old CFOs for FTSE 100 companies, but you need to really think about where you're going with this. And so the ideal candidate is, it's not for everybody. People go on the workshop and they realize, this isn't for me.
So,
It's going to be hard. If you stick the course, and in fact, it's a model that we developed some years ago called the SSB model, and
yeah.
it's serious small business. You're more likely to succeed longer term. There'll be some rainy days as well. If you treat it like a serious small business, you've got to have a plan.
Yeah.
You don't just stumble into it. You might get lucky with a project or two. And, most interims have great networks. So, and there's technology. LinkedIn is just a tool, to use every day, and connect with old colleagues from 20 years ago who are now running things and setting up
So
things.
Jason, are you saying then that there are people in the interim world who deliberately choose this as a permanent career? So it's not just that they themselves are between jobs. they actually choose this, even with the uncertainty of maybe having some gaps in their diary and so on. You're saying that they choose this.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's three camps of people. There are career interim consultants, contractors, and they go for it. Now, I've seen, and I think COVID changed this a little bit. I've said there are no 100% rules. There are interims that sort of say to me, look, over my dead body, would I go perm? And they do. Something happens.
Yeah, of
The
course.
kids leave home. They say,
Mm.
look, I've always wanted one big CEO role. I want a permanent role. We can talk in a minute about the convergence between perm roles and interim roles, because the tenure of a CEO is going down and down and down, from the stats I've seen, and almost touching on an interim short termism in business. I call it. I mean, you've got short termism in everything these days, don't you? You have football managers, like the former Man U manager went to Bayer Leverkusen and lasted 3 days.
Right.
That's they wanted immediate results,
Yeah.
and it wasn't
He didn't
right,
deliver.
and they said goodbye. People want things, yesterday. So you've got the career long
Mm.
term. You've then got very seasoned executives who are sort of semi-retired, but they want to stay busy and they still have a lot to offer.
Yeah.
That's a camp, and we speak to them a lot. So they could be retiring as a partner from EY, and again, they might say, look, I want to join some FTSE boards and develop a portfolio career. Or I want a collection of fractional roles, or I want to
Yeah.
do interim. And they think that it will be straightforward, and it needs some thinking. It needs some planning. It's not as straightforward as they think. From having 20 years in big roles in an organization.
Yeah.
I just gave that as one example, but it could be anything. It could be you were at British Airways for 20 years and
Yeah.
rose through the ranks, and so it's not a strict. So you've got that people coming off careers and wanting to stay busy. I think of my father, and I think the way I was brought up. You always work. I hopefully be working in my 80s and 90s, doing something, doing a bit of part time,
Yeah.
running being on the board of a charity, keeping
Sure.
this,
Sure.
this going. The third is executives in transition. So you might have. Most of our interims, the majority, I don't know if it's 60 or 70%, but they want to work, they need to work full time.
Yes.
They want to be they've got a plan about the income levels they want. So you might have an executive who's made redundant, um, happens a lot. And a company is bought and there's or merged, and there's only room for one ops director, and so one has to go, and they think, the market's not good. What am I going to do? So they think,
Okay.
I'm going
Okay.
to do interim,
They plug a gap.
and that could be a good example of the interim to perm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a way in quickly into another organization through
Okay.
transition.
So, Jason, I'm curious then about when that interim lands, because we all know that when a person joins a company, it takes time to get their feet under the table,
Yeah,
to assimilate into the
yeah,
team, to learn the culture, learn how even the cycles in that particular, the nuances in that organization. That's a real challenge for interims, where they have to learn very fast, and I suppose it also depends on how long their contract is for, if it's short, medium, or long term. But how do they manage to get their feet under the table quickly? Because in effect, they've got to do it faster than a regular employee who might be gifted this extra bit of time to get to know the
yeah.
place.
Okay, well, that's again a good question. I'll be a little bit provocative. I mean, we're taking in projects every day, and I then speak to some of our very talented interim executives, and Occasionally, and this happens a lot post-COVID actually, where the executive says, "Oh, that's a meaty role, big brief. Can I do this part-time? Can I do this hybrid? Can I do this 1 day a week on site?" And I say, "Look, no. Really, it's the opposite. It's about being fully immersed. It's
Yes.
about getting into that factory. It's about getting on site. It's about long days. It's about throwing yourself, into the project." So we have a model where we look at the achievements on, over 5 days, and what you do, for each of those 5 days. And it is about um, getting on site. It is about stakeholder engagement. It's about quick wins. It's about tearing apart often the terms of reference for the project. It's about managing that whole sort of ecosystem of people and managing up, down,
Mhm.
left, right, asking lots of questions, being very visible and very busy. So people almost forget you're an interim within, maybe a few weeks, that you are in there helping, delivering. You don't come across as standoffish. So those are the things that are important. It's about people's appetite, and what we're looking for are people that say, "Yeah, look, I'm hungry. I will travel to where I need to travel to.
Yeah.
Or use this as a great, exciting project. My partner, spouse wants to come with me. We'll get an Airbnb." It's about achieving objectives. There's no reason why a project can't be finished sooner. I was with the
You mean sooner
construction.
than the actual planned project term?
Yeah,
Okay.
finish sooner. And when I speak about that to clients, they say, "Oh my goodness, we've never finished a project sooner."
Right.
We do quite a lot of work in the construction industry, and you think of examples like HS2, where there's always delays, always the budget's
Yeah.
tripling, quadrupling, and it's got to be thought of as the opposite of that. How do you
Hmm.
get in with the right approach, get things moving, offer that service,
Yeah.
and leave that legacy? Have a plan around all those phases. We're not wanting, this is, I think, our job to work with our clients. We don't want to see drag. You
Yeah.
know,
Sure.
things
Sure.
happen, but we need to see things, delivered.
And Jason, I want to return to that point about the assimilation, because I've been on the other side of where interims have come into clients of mine, and what can happen is that the organization, the team that are in situ, might look at this person as a temporary. Clearly, they are temporary, but then they just don't include them as much as they could or should. And it's not out of badness; they're not being
Yeah.
mischievous, excluding them. Maybe some are, but in most cases, it's omission rather than commission. So, what advice would you give to interims to be sure that they assimilate and embed themselves in the culture, which is the most
Yeah. Well, I mean, the coming to what I said, it's a tough gig and it's not for everybody. I think you have to be a bit of a chameleon. I think you've got to get in and understand that culture. You're not going to fundamentally change that culture. You need to understand what that culture is, and you then need to be the person you need to be to get things done. And often it is galvanizing colleagues. It's putting your arms
yeah,
around them. They might be, we get involved in two areas, crisis and, really heavy lifting, things aren't good. And they might see our interim or interims coming in and sort of, there's an opportunity, a real opportunity for our person to take them with them because they really want the help. If they're the right person, and they also bring quite a lot of skills around coaching and mentoring. We really look for that, where they can explain things and take people with them. that is really important.
That's actually a good point, because then I guess particularly for that career interim person who maybe is a retired exec and wants to in a way give back but also get paid for it, that their measure of success is not just delivering the project, but I guess it's also coaching others and helping, leaving a legacy in the organization of not just getting the job done but
Yeah,
adding
I mean,
value above that.
you mentioned HR a few minutes ago, and there's one example that stands out where a medical devices company, probably about 500 staff, private equity backed, good growth. They didn't have an HR director. They didn't have a senior HR person in that
Hmm.
role. The CEO got really consumed by a lot of the people elements, and that was okay.
Yeah,
But they hadn't really seen the power of people in organizations, the power of a very good HR person. And so we looked at a role where the interim, this was actually a part time role, where the interim could sort of show the power of HR to infiltrate the organization. I mean, I think they did things well, like they paid people on time and they gave good employee benefits. This is not. I'm really talking about the more strategic elements of learning and development, and that sort of side of it, developing people and graduate programs, and what they did was they brought in somebody to sort of put a spotlight on that, but also to coach the head of HR into the director role over
hmm,
a period of time. So that was again the legacy, was that person becoming the director, someone who was high potential, but actually didn't have a background in HR, and had developed into some other areas of commercial roles and high potential. They were moving them around to find a sort of longer term home in HR, but we needed that person to help get them, into
yeah,
the promised land,
right.
into the director role. And I think, the interim. I think that's part and parcel, of roles where they are. There's many situations where investors perhaps are saying, "Look, I don't think there's any good people. That team needs to be totally replaced. You need to pull it apart." And when our
Hmm.
interim's gone, and they've said, "Actually, there's some really good people in here."
Uh-huh, right.
Um, there's some high potential people, but they are disenfranchised. They are, they're at flight risk, and in fact, they're really
Right.
good, and they're at flight risk. You need to look after them. We need to get them in the right roles. We
Very
need to
good.
pep them up, and I'm spending time daily here, listening, engaging with these
Hmm.
people, doing an assessment, and they are really good, and we can keep them, and we can develop them, and we can put them into
Right.
leadership roles. And
Well,
that's great.
that's great added value, Jason, isn't it?
Exactly.
You know your business has more to give. Your people are talented. The intent is there, but something is not quite clicking. That's where we come in. I'm Alan O'Neill, founder of Cara, and I've spent 30 years helping organizations unlock their full potential, not by working harder, but by working smarter, using our 7 steps to profit framework. This is a clear, practical framework that aligns your North Star, your culture, your customer experience, and your execution. Your business can grow without the drama. Our support is also enhanced by our own organization health assessment to give you clarity on what you need to work on. If you feel like your organization is full of effort but low on results, you are not alone. Let's change that. Why not book a no strings discovery call at 7stepstoprofit.com? That's the number 7, 7stepstoprofit.com. One call could change your direction. Yeah. And Jason, you've mentioned fractional. Let's just go back to that. Jason, you've mentioned fractional leadership or fractional a number of times. What's the difference between fractional and interim?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are thinking it's a subset of interim management, and I'm not so sure. You do see it popping up a lot, by the way. I read a statistic from LinkedIn that in 2023, 2,000 people in the UK said that they were doing or wanted to do fractional management.
And what does that mean, fractional? I mean, it's percentage
Well,
of
I'll come to that, Alan.
Okay.
Now there's 166,000. Well, this is weeks ago. There's probably
Right.
200,000 people that say they do fractional. So what does it mean? I think there's a lot of different definitions, but it is something for the future. I know it's here to stay, and I've been writing about it. I think it's in and around that entrepreneurial pool. We have 30,000 entrepreneurs we work with, and there are those that are a bit more interim, a bit more NED portfolio. And I think fractional's a bit more related to NED portfolio, where you've got, you know, two paid NED roles, two
Okay.
volunteer NED roles, and then maybe you're a school governor, or you're doing
Yes.
some voluntary work. So you've got a plan around that. Fractional is is um, is part time, so it's 1 day a week or 2 days a week, but it's much longer term and much more strategic.
It's
So
permanent full time, I guess. Is that it?
it is, but you're still working. I think you'd still be working through your own
A
personal
permanent part time.
services company, just like our interim would, your own, Alan O'Neill Limited.
Yeah.
You'd still be working through. You'd still be that self-directed entrepreneur that I keep talking about. But I think you have a game plan around having 4 or 5 fractional roles. So you're doing, 2 days a week as a fractional CEO. You're doing 1 day a week as kind of a board advisor. You're doing one day a week on strategy and it's long term. So my firm has 2 of these individuals working for us. So we're practicing what we preach.
Oh, right.
Um, at least on the fractional side, in that we have a super duper part time fractional FD. So by long term, he's been working with us for about 30 years.
Oh, really?
And we have a fractional HR support.
Okay.
And that's long term. So I think that's the difference. Now, interim managers, as I've said, interim tends to be full on. I don't know how you can work for 7 days a week on a crisis project or on a big program of work and fit in fractional or fit in
Hmm.
some NED roles. You've kind of got to go one way or the other.
Right.
So and to sort of push that point, I might, and I've got a few part time sort of fractional roles now. So I might say, look, I need you. You're very strong on financial regulation, and I need you 2 days a week to work on a project with the Financial Conduct Authority to help this firm get authorization. And I might call the brilliant candidate from our pool. And they
Hmm.
say, well, Jason, that's a wonderful project, but what do I do with my other 3 days of the week? It's going to be hard for me to get 3 days of work. I want 5 days of work, maybe 4 days of work, but I want to work full time. That's what I've decided to do as the strategy for my own business. As I said earlier, my serious small business. So
Hmm.
good on you. So I think it's about having a plan. So the people that are successful with fractional, they go that way. They typically are targeting startups and mid-market companies. So I
Right.
think it's going to be a game changer for smaller organizations that basically can't, maybe at that time of their evolution, their growth, they can't afford the heavy hitter CFO
Sure. Sure.
full time with all the bonuses and equity share. But it's a way of accessing top talent without as much financial commitment.
Gotcha.
So they
Yeah.
can agree a day a week on probably a higher day rate than the normal interim manager.
Hmm.
I think there's a premium at that level of fractional because it's more strategic,
Yeah.
um, and there's it's probably a slightly higher rate. But what you're doing is you're getting, like I said, you might be a mid-market firm. You're accessing that brilliant person, and you might be paying for 1 or 2 days, but I guarantee you're getting more. I think you do
Yeah,
with
of
a
course.
full-time interim. You're getting,
I get it.
if they work 7 days a week, you're getting 9 days a week if that was possible, because
Yes.
they're always at the end of a phone.
And they're
They're
committed, aren't they?
they're
Yeah.
committed because remember, it's their brand as well. They're
Yeah.
going to get their next project. Half the time, they're going to get it through a firm like mine. So
Yeah.
50% of all projects in the market go through a provider firm, and 50% go through your own network.
Ah,
So I'm looking for people that got great references, are working till midnight on their last day, and I want to place them again. And also, other people will recommend them. So they're
okay.
developing their personal brand
Of course.
around work. So with Fractional, I think it's similar to Interim. Fractional, they are saying, so the people that are well established are saying, Jason, okay, I've got one ending after 3 years. I've got three others. I want to replace one fractional role. And I say, well, look, I'm doing interim with a really exciting firm. I've got a great client, and I think they could do with 1 day a week of
Hmm.
your advice, because they want to do something different in the marketplace. Maybe they want to develop a B2C channel for their medical equipment.
Yeah,
They're just
I get it.
B2B at the moment. Having somebody that's there helping them think at board level, and then working on the delivery of that. But in that case, I might then work with that individual to bring in an interim general manager or even a permanent person to actually run it. But you've got the fractional person who's almost like an extension of the CEO, is helping with the future, development of the organization without distracting the
Yeah.
existing leadership team. And it's also that maybe that little can be a bit of an annoying mosquito as well.
Yeah.
Saying,
Look, Jason,
what
I
about
want to.
this? What about that?
Yeah. Okay. Look, I want to round up here and maybe just to not to finish on a negative, but just a note of caution. What are the risks and the misconceptions around interim, and whether those risks be for the boards, the contracting organization, or indeed the candidate? What risks, banana
Yeah, I mean,
skins,
look,
do you want to cover?
I've we've had an hour or so, lovely chat, Alan. So I've really enjoyed it, and you can tell I'm very passionate about
For sure.
executive and the plight of people's careers, and like I said, I think there's no real 100% rules. People can come in and out of these sort of concepts I've been talking about, but it's not a. Some of our clients say, think it's a panacea. I mean, I think that some of the interims think that the work of an interim is the holy grail, but it's not. I mean, I think our people coming to organizations need to be looked after. There needs to be good communication that they're coming and why they're coming.
Hmm.
I've learned the hard way here.
Yeah.
I've had situations where they have not been ready. They have not had an internal comms saying what they're doing, and we've wasted the first week. Hasn't been buy-in as to why that person's there. There's been differing views. There's been times where there's like an incumbent there, and you've got to manage the incumbent and why they're coming in to help that person be more successful. Because the incumbent might think, oh, they're just going to take my job.
Hmm.
And actually, one situation I can think of, it was just last year, they were certainly not coming to take their job. They were coming to, if anything, to do the absolute opposite. Save their job, really support them during a tough time of boosting capacity in an industrial setting. So I think it's to say, look, these are actually people at the end of the day.
Right.
They are good. They've got a great track record behind them. But think about the communication around them coming in, and be really clear on objectives. We normally rip apart the job descriptions and initial sort of terms of reference, and we spend some time with the client saying, really, what do we need to achieve here? What are you've said there are 25 things to achieve. What are the top three things?
Yeah.
And then let's have a meeting 5 days in where we again maybe rip it apart again.
Yeah.
we can't, the client is paying for the value. We've got to be clear. We've got to make sure that we're all aligned to that. And
Gotcha.
I've seen
Right.
many times where there isn't that alignment. So it's about shake, shake, shake. Make sure we're aligned, and set ourselves up for for success at the end of the day.
So, Jason, look, you've given a great rendition of the world of interim and fractional and what it's like for boards and the interims themselves. But I'm just curious a little bit about Russam, the history of Russam. We've heard a lot about Russam throughout this conversation and the world of interim, both from the board's perspective and the interim's perspective. But give me a little bit of the history of Russam. I think you said it started in 1982. Is that correct? Or
It did, and we were the first of our kind.
congratulations.
Our founder Charles was CFO at big organisation. I think it was Whitbread, and saw what was going on in Scandinavia, and I mentioned the Netherlands with this concept, and it was a recession in the early 80s, and it was a good way. There were some very talented people that came available in the market, and we could turn them around and put them back into contract roles where they were solving problems for businesses and getting things done, often around restructuring and financial and people restructuring and taking cost out. So that was 43 years ago, and I got involved through networking. So my father-in-law knew the founder Charles, and Charles Russam sort of helped me become an interim manager. And I ended up doing a few projects. I said earlier that I didn't think I was very good at it, and it was something maybe I should have done later in my career when I really knew what I was good at, and had that X factor.
Mm-hmm.
But ironically, I joined an interim management provider firm as an interim, and then soon thereafter, I loved it. It's a family business, family spirit. 25 people. I was tired of corporate life, to be
Yeah.
honest. I
So,
was, big corporates where decisions were being made in New York or in Sydney, out of my
right.
control, and I wanted to be in control of my destiny. And I think that's a key point I've tried to stress. I was ready to be more in control. So the thought of starting to buy him out, and then in 2012, I finished a buyout with my business partner, Ian Joseph, and we took over the firm. And we're a different organization now. We do a lot of other things. We also have another business that's a leader in putting trustees into not-for-profits and helping
right.
people in corporates, helping high potential people step onto boards. We don't just do interim, we do executive search.
Okay.
We're part of a fantastic global group called the Worldwide Interim Group, where we feel we're part of something bigger. We're
Yeah.
co-shareholders in a global network. We don't call it a network or an alliance, but that's kind of what it is.
Yeah.
We bound together. We spend a lot of time together. I've just come back from being with them in Warsaw, where the partners come in. And so we might need to deliver a solution in Singapore or in Mexico, and we can do that. We've got trusted people that speak our language, and it's going from strength to strength in that regard. And so, I've become really dedicated my career to this world of interim management. I helped develop the industry body in the UK that my chairman or our founder established in, I think, 1987, and then I was chairman for about 10 years. And it's all about saying, look, we are pioneering. We need to keep banging the drum for this area of interim executive management and what it is and what it isn't. Like I said, it does blur a bit. I often think of it as, there's these three circles that overlap a bit. You've got this interim management, you've got this executive search, and you've got this management consultancy, and they can all be used to deliver things.
Right.
but we're the smallest probably in volume. I mean, people are more likely to go and hire a permanent CEO, with a search firm, or go with a McKinsey, wonderful management consultancy company, or whoever it might be, Carney and Bain. But where do we sit? And let's bang the drum for that. We've got a strong body. The Institute of Interim Management represents all the candidates in the marketplace, and they do a very good job. There are now global bodies that represent the interim managers. Well, we're plugged into all of them because it's all about saying that we want to be a big part of this, but we need the sector to be successful. We
Sure.
need the sector to grow, and we are.
Okay.
We've grown about 10% year on year. We have some flat years, but we're moving in the right direction with our
And
business.
I'm curious then, just to finish off, Jason, how do you get time to have such a full looking garden behind you? Your green fingers clearly are busy. I mean, you clearly love gardening.
Well, I'm sorry the monk jack hasn't wandered through for me to show you today. But yeah, it's always sunny in East Northamptonshire. It's always lovely.
I can see that the sun has changed since we started the conversation.
Well,
It's
it's
now
one
moving around.
fifteen. It's 1:15 p.m. It's almost
Yes.
dark. It's almost the end of the day.
There you go.
But
Jason,
thank
let's
you.
leave it there. It's been fantastic listening to the world of Interim and Russam. If anybody wants to contact Russam, it's Russam, Russam, M for mother, .co.uk. Is that correct?
It sure is. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you. Take care.